So right now, like 73% of enterprises have this incredibly expensive AI sandbox that they're honestly just terrified to actually use.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
Right. You look at these massive investments in artificial intelligence, they've got these pilots running in a perfectly controlled environment. But the vast majority of companies are just completely paralyzed. They literally can't push those models into full production.
I mean, it is absolutely the defining bottleneck of the current tech cycle. Because business leaders are eager to deploy these capabilities, obviously, but taking an AI model live, integrating it into the actual operational heartbeat of a company that presents a risk profile that most boards just can't stomach.
Yeah, they just hit a wall.
Exactly. They hit that wall and the pilot never scales.
It feels exactly like buying a brand new multi-million-dollar hypercar. You bring it home, it's sitting in your driveway, and you're just sitting in the driver's seat riving the engine.
Just listening to it.
Right. It sounds incredibly powerful, but you only ever sit in the driveway because taking it out on the highway without the proper license means the government could literally crush the car and bankrupt you in the process. You just can't put it in drive.
That's a perfect analogy, actually.
Like, and for the business leaders, the CTOs, and the developers tuning into this deep dive, I mean, that pressure is visceral. The mandate to adopt AI is coming from everywhere, but the roadmap to safely deploy it at scale is super murky. So our mission today is to figure out how to get out of that driveway.
And we actually have a really solid map for that now.
We do. We're examining a highly detailed blueprint published by AetherLink, a prominent Dutch AI consultancy that looks at what is happening right now in Tampere, Finland. Campair is quietly becoming this critical nexus for European AI development, and they seem to be cracking the code on this exact deployment problem.
The urgency of this blueprint really cannot be overstated, particularly for European enterprises. The landscape is shifting underneath our feet, and the timeline is shrinking incredibly fast. We are looking directly at the impending EU AI Act.
Right, the big one.
Yeah. Full enforcement is expected by mid-2025 for anything classified as a high-risk application. And the stakes here are not just, a simple slap on the wrist or a minor regulatory fee.
Oh, it's serious.
Very. Non-compliance can trigger sanctions ranging from 5 million euros up to 6% of a company's global turnover.
Wow, 6% of global turnover is that's an existential threat. For a multinational, that is the kind of catastrophic penalty that makes a risk-averse board decide to just pull the plug on an entire digital transformation initiative rather than roll the dice.
Exactly. And that fear is the exact mechanism keeping that 73% of companies trapped in pilot purgatory. But, Tampere offers this fascinating counter-narrative. This is a city with a 2.3 billion euro tech sector.
It's massive.
Right. Operating with over 5,000 AI experts concentrated within a very tight collaborative ecosystem, they are essentially serving as the ultimate real-world laboratory for deploying AI legally and safely under these new, strict European frameworks.
And the focus is shifted, right?
Fundamentally, it is no longer a race to build the smartest, most conversational AI. The entire engineering focus is now on building the most trustworthy, deterministic, and compliant systems.
Which is such a massive shift in how we evaluate technology. It's not about the flashiest tech demo anymore. It's about the architecture that won't get you sued or fined into oblivion.
Spot on.
So to understand how these organizations are actually getting the car out of the driveway, we need to unpack the specific type of AI they're building. Because the sources from AetherLink make it very clear we are not talking about standard customer service chatbots here. We are looking at a hard pivot toward agentic AI.
Yeah, and that distinction is the foundation of everything happening in Tampere. Agentic AI represents a fundamental evolution in how a system interacts with its environment. Traditional chatbots, they're entirely reactive.
Right, they just wait for you.
Exactly. They rely on predefined prompts. You ask a question, it searches its weights or a database, and it hands you text back. But an AI agent is autonomous. It's designed to take a high-level goal, break it down into a sequence of smaller tasks, execute those tasks, and adapt its multi-step workflow in real time.
Based on whatever feedback it gets from your systems.
Yes. It doesn't just generate text, it actually takes action.
Let's break down the mechanics of how that actually works, because AetherLink's development arm, AetherDV, categorizes the architecture of these custom agents into 3 specific layers.
Right, the 3-layer model.
Yeah. So the first layer is the RAG system retrieval augmented generation. For the CTOs listening, you already know RAG is cable stakes. It connects the AI to your internal knowledge base so it grounds its answers in your proprietary data.
So it's not just hallucinating based on the open internet.
Exactly. But RA alone is basically just a hyper-efficient librarian. Like, it can find the manual, but it can't fix the machine.
The librarian analogy is super apt. A RAG gives the model context, but it provides absolutely zero capability for execution. And that is where the second layer comes in the MCP server, or Model Context Protocol.
This is the big one.
It's the critical missing link for most enterprises. Legacy systems, whether that's a 15-year-old deployment of SAP, a highly customized CRM, or some niche CAD platform, they do not natively speak the unstructured language of large language models.
They just don't understand each other.
Right. So MCP acts as a standardized communication and translation layer. It takes the unstructured natural language intent of the AI and deterministically maps it to the specific rigid API calls that your legacy software requires.
And then the third layer is the agentic workflow itself. This is the orchestration engine that uses the RAG data to understand the context and the MCP adapter to actually go out and manipulate those external systems autonomously.
Exactly, putting it all together.
So if a traditional chatbot is like a fast food drive-through speaker, where you ask for a burger and it gives you a preset response, an AI agent is an autonomous sous chef. You don't micromanage its steps.
You just give it the goal.
Right. You give it the goal of making dinner. It checks your pantry on its own, realizes you're out of garlic, interfaces with your grocery delivery app to order the missing ingredients, preps the vegetables, and manages the stove temperatures.
Yeah. The sous chef navigates the intermediate friction completely autonomously. If the grocery app is out of garlic, the agent doesn't just crash and throw a 404 error code.
It adapts.
Right. It adapts, perhaps substituting shallots, and continues the workflow toward the final goal.
Okay, but this is where I have to step in and play the skeptic. Because if I'm evaluating this for my enterprise, I hear autonomous sous chef and my threat detection radar goes off immediately.
That's fair. It sounds risky.
It really does. You're suggesting we hook up a probabilistic text generator and AI to our core financial systems, our supply chain software, and our ERPs, and just let it autonomously execute multi-step workflows.
I know how it sounds.
I mean, if a chatbot hallucinates, a customer gets a weird email. If an autonomous agent hallucinates a procurement decision, it might order 3 tons of industrial steel that we don't need, or randomly alter a live construction budget. The vulnerability just seems astronomically high.
Your skepticism is exactly why boards are blocking these deployments. Giving a probabilistic model read and write access to a rigid financial system sounds inherently reckless. But let's look at how AetherLink navigated this exact risk profile in a real-world setting.
Okay, let's hear it.
Their case study focuses on a mid-sized construction company in Tampere, and they were managing roughly 45 million euros in annual projects.
A 45 million euro portfolio means the margins are tight and the stakes are incredibly real.
Highly real. And their operational baseline was just a classic enterprise nightmare. Their project managers were spending 60% of their working hours manually consolidating data.
Over half their week, just on data entry.
Yes. Because the company's data was fractured across 12 completely siloed legacy systems. They had specialized CAD tools for structural design, separate HR scheduling software, highly rigid financial platforms, and scattered supplier inventory databases.
I can visualize the absolute chaos of that. You have a project manager trying to reconcile an unstructured 3D architectural file with a rigid row and column financial spreadsheet.
All while checking a totally different portal to see if the concrete is delayed by the rain.
Right. When your highly skilled managers are spending 60% of their week essentially acting as manual human APIs, literally copying and pasting data between screens, they're only spending 40% of their time actually analyzing risk and managing the build.
It's a massive waste of talent.
Yeah, and the instinct for most tech consultants walking into that mess would be to advise ripping out all 12 of those legacy systems and spending millions to migrate to a single unified platform.
Which is a nightmare. A migration of that scale takes 3 to 5 years, disrupts every active project, and often fails entirely. But they avoided that trap completely by utilizing the MCP server architecture.
Oh, they kept the old systems.
They did not rip and replace a single piece of legacy software. Instead, the Model Context Protocol served as a universal adapter cable. It sat on top of the existing infrastructure, creating a secure bridge between the AI and those 12 fragmented systems.
Oh, wow.
And then they combined that with a RGRI system trained on 8 years of the company's historical project data, essentially feeding the AI the institutional memory of how this specific firm operates.
So it actually knows how long a specific supplier usually takes to deliver? or where the historical bottlenecks typically happen in their specific workflows.
Exactly, it internalizes the operational reality of the company. With that foundation in place, they deployed an autonomous agent designed to orchestrate daily risk assessments. Its directive was to constantly monitor the data flowing through those 12 systems, cross-reference design changes with real-time material costs, forecast the budget, and optimize resource allocation across all the active sites.
Okay, and what were the hard metrics after deployment? Because saving time on data entry is great, but it has to move the needle on the actual construction projects.
The metrics after just a 6-month deployment were staggering. The project managers reclaimed 18 hours a week of their time.
18 hours.
Yeah. And the company's budget variance, the critical gap between projected costs and actual expenditures, plummeted from a volatile plus or minus 8% down to a highly predictable 2%. Furthermore, overall resource efficiency increased by 24%.
Meaning heavy machinery and specialized contractors were no longer sitting idle waiting for prerequisite tasks to be done. Reclaiming 18 hours a week for a senior project manager is the holy grail of ROI. You are buying back nearly half a work week for your most expensive talent.
Huh.
They aren't wrangling CSV files anymore. They are actually looking ahead and making strategic decisions.
It completely changes their job description.
But this success brings us right back to the regulatory elephant in the room. If this AI agent is autonomously scraping 12 disparate systems, conducting risk assessments, and making active budget forecasts for commercial construction projects, well, under the EU AI Act parameters you outlined earlier, that system is glowing red.
Oh, absolutely.
That is unequivocally a high-risk application.
It hits almost every trigger for high-risk classification. Autonomous decision support in critical infrastructure and employment scheduling requires stringent regulatory oversight.
But according to the AetherLink deployment timeline, this entire system went live in 16 weeks. I find that incredibly difficult to believe.
It sounds impossible, right?
Yeah, in a traditional enterprise environment, achieving regulatory compliance for a high-risk system involves months of committee meetings, external audits, and endless legal reviews. How do you integrate a high-risk AI into 12 legacy platforms in 4 months without the project grinding to an absolute halt in red tape?
The secret lies in a methodology they call compliance-first architecture. You see, the traditional software development lifecycle is fundamentally broken when it comes to AI.
How so?
Well, the standard playbook is to build the core feature, optimize the model, test its performance, and then, right before you plan to launch, you hand it over to the legal and compliance teams. Those teams inevitably find a dozen transparency and data governance violations, which forces the engineering team to go back and tear apart their own code.
It's the equivalent of trying to retrofit plumbing into a house after the drywall is already painted and the wallpaper is up.
Versus laying the pipes while the foundation is being poured.
A perfect visualization. Tearing down the drywall to add transparency logs and human-in-the-loop overrides after the core model is finalized that stalls deployments for months.
Exactly. So the EtherDV architecture embeds the requirements of the EU AI Act directly into the system's foundational code from day one.
Wait, what does that actually look like at the engineering level? Like, how do you code a legal requirement?
It manifests as specific, non-negotiable technical guardrails. For example, deterministic output logging is built right into the MCP layer. That means every single API call the agent makes is immutably recorded for auditability.
Okay, that makes sense.
They also implement granular role-based access controls. So the agent can only access the specific data silos that the human user prompting it is authorized to see. And most importantly, they build in automated confidence scoring.
What does that do?
So if the agent calculates a budget adjustment, but its internal confidence score is below 95%, the system is hard-coded to halt the autonomous workflow. It forces a human-in-the-loop approval before executing the API call.
But doesn't building all of those rigid guardrails up front severely limit the system? I mean, the whole point of artificial intelligence is its dynamic flexibility. If you hard-code an approval loop and strict access limits for every single action, aren't you essentially just writing a traditional brittle software script?
Where's the AI?
Right, exactly.
You have to separate the reasoning engine from the execution engine. The LLM's reasoning, its ability to understand unstructured data, spot a scheduling conflict, and propose a solution that remains entirely fluid and dynamic. The rigidity only applies to the execution space.
Ah, I see.
The AI can think as creatively as it wants, but it can only take action within a strictly defined, legally compliant corridor. And because they built those corridors first, the developers never had to second guess if a feature would pass a legal audit. The construction company passed its EU AI Act compliance audits with zero remediation required.
Zero remediation. No legal back and forth. No tearing down the drywall to fix the plumbing.
None. The 30 to 40% reduction in their deployment timeline came entirely from eliminating that massive post-development retrofitting cycle. By embracing the constraints of the regulation early, they dramatically accelerated their time to market.
If you can use this architecture to tame the absolute unpredictable chaos of an active construction site, the controlled environments in other sectors must be seeing incredible ripple effects. Where else within this 2.3 billion euro Tampere Tech ecosystem is this compliance-first model taking root?
The cross-industry penetration is moving very quickly. To understand the scale, let's look deeply at the logistics sector. Campair serves as a major transportation corridor, and one regional logistics firm utilized this exact agentic architecture to tackle fleet efficiency.
So they applied it to shipping routes.
Yeah, but they didn't just plug an AI into Google Maps. They deployed an agent that autonomously monitors live municipal traffic APIs,
Right.
real-time weather systems, the ERP data showing dock availability at the supplier warehouses, and the SAP maintenance schedules for their trucks.
It's analyzing the entire supply chain ecosystem simultaneously.
Yes, and based on that holistic view, the agent dynamically reroutes the fleet minute by minute to avoid delays and optimize load times. That single agentic workflow reduced the firm's entire fleet fuel consumption by 19%.
A 19% reduction in fuel costs for a logistics company goes straight to the bottom line while simultaneously crushing their carbon emission targets. I mean, it is a massive competitive advantage.
And we're seeing similar transformations in other sectors, too. In manufacturing, where Tampere has over 180 facilities transitioning to Industry 4.0, custom agents managing predictive maintenance and production scheduling are driving 16% productivity gains.
That's incredible.
Even in smart tourism, recommendation agents analyzing visitor behavior patterns have increased repeat visitors by 22%. The underlying MCP architecture is identical across all of them, only the data and the endpoints change. But, there's a very specific ticking clock attached to all of this innovation.
Right. This relates to the 20 million euro Tampere AI Champion project mentioned in the sources.
That is the critical deadline every business leader needs to be aware of. That initiative is funding a massive amount of this research, and the project concludes in 2026. When it finishes, it's going to release a flood of intellectual property, proven architectural frameworks, and compliance best practices directly into the broader European market.
Meaning the playbook won't be a secret anymore. Anyone with the capital will be able to replicate this architecture.
Exactly. The strategic window for a first-mover advantage is closing. It exists right now in this 2025 to 2026 timeframe. Industry analysts project that by 2027, having custom, fully compliant AI agents orchestrating your internal workflows will not be a unique competitive advantage. It will be baseline table stakes.
Wow, that's soon.
If you are still relying on manual data entry across siloed systems in 2027, you simply will not be able to compete on operating margins or deployment speed. Organizations that begin building their compliance-first architecture today are effectively buying themselves an 18 to 24-month lead over their competitors.
This has been an incredibly dense and illuminating deep dive. To wrap this up for the listener, let's distill all of this down to the core insights. What is the absolute most important takeaway from the Tampere blueprint?
Well, why don't you start?
Okay, I will start. For me, the most profound concept we discussed today is the actual mechanism of the MCP server. As a CTO or business leader, the most terrifying barrier to adopting futuristic tech is the assumption that you have to undergo a traumatic, multi-year process of ripping out your messy, decades-old enterprise tech stack.
Nobody wants to do that.
Nobody. The realization that you don't have to throw away your legacy SAP or your heavily customized CRM is huge. The MCP acts as a deterministic translation layer, bridging the gap between your old rigid data silos and the fluid reasoning of AI agents. It lowers the barrier to entry so significantly that getting out of pilot purgatory finally feels like an achievable engineering task rather than an impossible corporate mandate. What stands out to you as the definitive insight?
For me, the definitive insight is the necessary mindset shift regarding regulation. The tech industry has been deeply conditioned to view frameworks like the EU AI Act purely as bureaucratic roadblocks. Red tape designed to punish innovation and slow down progress.
Yeah, that's definitely the prevailing narrative.
But what the engineering teams in Tampere are proving is that compliance-first architecture is actually a deployment accelerator. When you stop fighting the constraints and instead build transparency, auditability, and deterministic logging into the foundational DNA of your system, you don't just avoid catastrophic fines.
Yeah.
You actually build a much more reliable, secure, and robust piece of software. And you deploy it faster because you eliminate the friction of retrofitting. It basically transforms regulation from a corporate liability into a measurable competitive advantage.
That's a huge perspective shift.
It really is. And as we close out today's deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to examine within your own operations. Consider the construction firm we discussed. An AI agent was able to seamlessly connect 12 fragmented legacy systems to catch an unpredictable budget variance before the money was even spent.
Yeah.
So look closely at your own tech stack and your daily workflows. What internal blind spots, operational bottlenecks, or manual data entry chores in your organization are currently hiding in plain sight, just waiting for an autonomous, agentic workflow to illuminate and resolve them?
That is an excellent question to bring to your engineering and leadership teams on Monday morning. For more AI insights, visit AetherLink.ai.